The story continues directly from where Part 1 concluded. Aura Blackthorn, once thought to be a defective Omega without ascent, has discovered her true heritage as descendant of a powerful seer bloodline. Brought to the Northern Territories by King Thorn, she learned that her grandmother Lyra had been kidnapped from the north, and that a magical pendant had been suppressing Era's true nature and abilities. The northern lands suffer under a curse of eternal winter that can only be broken by the Forgotten One, when the scentless carries the sweetest perfume. In the final scene of Part 1, Aura removed her protective pendant in the Seer's chamber of Blackfrost Keep, with Queen Dagger, Thorn's mother, and Thorn present. As her true nature began to emerge, the curse responded violently, and Thorn vowed they would fight back. The fire flickered in the hearth as the last flame fought against the encroaching darkness. Outside the tower, the wind howled with supernatural fury, as if winter itself knew its reign was being challenged. Without the familiar weight of the pendant against my chest, I felt strangely light, yet vulnerable, as if a part of me that had been dormant my entire life was finally awakening. "Breathe, Era," Thorn murmured, his hand still enveloping mine. "Let your senses adjust." But how could I adjust to this maelstrom? The world around me had transformed. Colors I'd never noticed before shimmered at the edges of my vision. Each sound, the crackling wood, Queen Dagger's whispered breath, the distant wind against stone, reached me with crystal clarity. And the scents. Gods, the scents, the resin of burning logs, the metallic perfume of the bloodroot tea, the deep ancient smell of books and parchment. And Thorn. His scent enveloped me like a physical embrace. Pine forests after a snowfall, mountain air, and something primal that called to the deepest part of me. I inhaled sharply, overwhelmed by the intensity of it. "What's happening to me?" I gasped, clutching his hand tighter. "Your true nature is emerging," Queen Dagger said, her voice steady despite the concern in her eyes. "For 22 years, the pendant has suppressed who you truly are. Your body, your senses, your abilities, they're all awakening at once." Another gust of wind slammed against the tower, this one strong enough to rattle the glass in the windows. One pane cracked, a thin line spreading across its surface like ice over a lake. "The curse feels your presence," Thorn said grimly. "It knows what you represent." A sudden searing pain shot through my temples. I cried out, pressing my hands against my head. Images flashed before my eyes. Snow-covered mountains bathed in sunlight, trees heavy with spring blossoms, a massive gray wolf running through a moonlit forest, and blood, so much blood, spreading across pristine snow. "Ara!" Thorn's voice seemed to come from far away. His hands gripped my shoulders, steadying me as I swayed. "Visions," Queen Dagger whispered. "So soon. This confirms it. She is indeed a Blackthorn seer." The images faded, leaving me gasping and disoriented. "What did I just see?" "Your gift awakening," the Queen said. "What did you perceive?" I described the fragmented visions, watching their expressions grow increasingly grave with each detail. "The wolf? Did you recognize it?" Thorn asked, his voice tight. I shook my head. "No, but it was familiar somehow." Queen Dagger exchanged a meaningful look with her son. "She needs rest before attempting anything further. The pendant's removal has already triggered significant changes. Her body and mind need time to adjust." Thorn nodded reluctantly. "The East Tower has been prepared for her." "No," the Queen said sharply. "Not the East Tower. The North Chamber." Thorn's eyes widened. "Mother, I know exactly what it is," she interrupted. "It's where she belongs." Without further explanation, Queen Dagger swept toward the door, gesturing for us to follow. As we descended the winding staircase, the violent winds outside seemed to follow our progress, howling louder at each window we passed. The stone walls of Blackfrost Keep groaned under the assault, as if the very fortress were under siege. "What is the North Chamber?" I asked Thorn quietly as we walked. "It was your grandmother's room," he replied, his voice equally low. "After she was taken, no one was permitted to enter it. My mother had it preserved exactly as Lyra left it." The implications of this revelation sent a shiver through me. Not only was I about to sleep in a room untouched for 30 years, but it had belonged to a woman I'd known only in her exile, stripped of her power and position. Queen Dagger led us through a series of corridors, each grander than the last, until we reached a heavy oak door carved with intricate patterns of wolves and ravens. She withdrew a key from the folds of her dress, its silver surface gleaming in the torchlight. "No one has entered this room since the day Lyra was taken," she said, turning the key in the lock. "Not even I." The door swung open with a soft creak. Inside, moonlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating a chamber frozen in time. A large four-poster bed dominated one wall, its covers still turned down as if awaiting its owner's return. Bookshelves lined another wall, filled with leather-bound volumes. A writing desk stood near the window, quills and ink long dried, parchment yellowed with age. The air smelled of dried lavender and something else, a lingering trace of whoever had placed the preservation spells. This was her sanctuary, Queen Dagger said softly, where she worked her most powerful visions. I stepped inside, drawn by an inexplicable pull. The room felt alive somehow, as if it had been waiting for me. As I moved further in, my fingers brushed against a silver hairbrush on the dressing table. The moment I touched it, another vision flashed before my eyes. A woman with my features but older, brushing long dark hair, her expression troubled as she gazed out at falling snow. "Grandmother," I whispered, jerking my hand away. "The objects in this room carry echoes of her power," Thorn explained, standing in the doorway. "For you, her blood, those echoes will be stronger." Queen Dagger placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Rest now. In the morning, we will begin your training." "Training?" I asked, suddenly apprehensive. "To control your awakening gifts," she explained, "and to prepare you for what must come next." After they left, I stood alone in my grandmother's chamber, surrounded by the remnants of a life I'd never known was connected to mine. Outside, the wind continued its furious assault on the keep, but here, in this room, preserved by magic and memory, I felt strangely protected. I approached the bed cautiously, as if expecting its rightful owner to materialize and demand an explanation for my presence. When nothing happened, I sank onto its edge, running my hand over the intricately embroidered coverlet. Exhaustion washed over me in waves. The events of the day, my departure from the only home I'd known, the journey north, the revelations about my heritage, and finally, the removal of the pendant, had left me drained beyond measure. As I lay down, my head swimming with new sensations and half-formed visions, I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye. Turning quickly, I saw nothing but shadows, yet the sensation of being watched persisted. "Is someone there?" I called softly. No answer came, but as I drifted toward sleep, I could have sworn I heard a woman's voice, gentle as a summer breeze, whisper, "At last, little one, at last." That night, my dreams were not of darkness and pursuit as Thorn had warned, but of a spring I had never witnessed. Flowers bloomed through melting snow, rivers ran free of ice, and children with northern features played beneath a warm sun. Throughout it all, a silver-gray wolf with golden-rimmed eyes watched over them, over me, from a nearby hill. I awoke to sunlight streaming through the windows, momentarily disoriented by my surroundings. The events of the previous day rushed back, and I sat up quickly, half expecting to find myself back in my tiny room at Alaric's pack house. Instead, I was still in my grandmother's chamber at Black Frost Keep, the morning light casting long shadows across the floor. A soft knock at the door preceded the entrance of a young woman carrying a tray. She froze when she saw me, her eyes widening. "My lady," she said, dropping into a hasty curtsy that nearly upset the tray. "I didn't expect you to be awake. Please, I'm not," I began, uncomfortable with the formality, but she hurried forward, setting the tray on a small table. "The Queen Dagger requests your presence in the Great Hall once you've broken your fast," she said, backing toward the door. "I've brought warm water for washing and—" She gestured to a wooden chest at the foot of the bed. "Her Majesty said you'll find suitable clothing there." Before I could thank her, she was gone, leaving me alone with a tray of food more substantial than any breakfast I'd been allowed in Alaric's pack. Fresh bread, Honey, dried fruits, and smoked meat filled the plate, accompanied by a steaming cup of herbal tea. As I ate, savoring flavors that seemed impossibly rich to my newly enhanced senses, I contemplated the chest the servant had mentioned. When curiosity finally overcame me, I knelt before it and lifted the heavy lid. Inside lay clothing of a quality I'd never touched before. Dresses of fine wool and soft linen, tunics embroidered with silver thread, leggings of supple leather, all in shades of deep blue, forest green, and silver gray. Northern colors. As I lifted out a blue dress with silver embroidery along the neckline and sleeves, something small tumbled from its folds onto the floor. I bent to retrieve it, a small carving of a wolf made from pale wood, almost identical to the one my father had made me, the one I'd brought in my small bag of possessions. Turning it over in my palm, I noticed tiny initials carved on the bottom. L.B. Lyra Blackthorn. My grandmother had kept a token nearly identical to the one my father had given me. Another connection. Another thread binding me to this place and these people I'd never known existed until yesterday. With trembling fingers, I dressed in the blue gown, surprised by how perfectly it fit my frame. The fabric settled against my skin like an embrace, warm despite the chill that pervaded the keep. I slipped both wolf carvings into the dress's pocket, drawing comfort from their familiar weight. When I finally made my way down to the great hall, guided by another servant who had been waiting outside my door, I was struck by the contrast between Blackfrost Keep's austere exterior and the unexpected warmth within. Massive fireplaces kept the hall comfortably warm, and tapestries depicting northern hunts and celebrations added color to the stone walls. The hall fell silent as I entered. Dozens of eyes turned toward me, warriors, servants, nobles, all pausing in their morning activities to stare at the newcomer. Self-consciousness washed over me, and I fought the urge to shrink back, to make myself invisible as I had for so many years in Alaric's pack. "Stand tall," came a deep voice, and Thorn was suddenly beside me, his warmth a tangible presence. "Show them who you are. I'm not sure I know that myself yet," I whispered. A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Then show them who you're becoming." Queen Dogger sat at the high table on a massive chair of carved black wood, her silver hair gleaming in the morning light that filtered through high windows. She beckoned us forward, and conversations gradually resumed around the hall, though I remained acutely aware of sideways glances and whispered comments. "You've rested well?" the Queen asked as we approached. "Yes, Your Majesty," I replied, the formality feeling strange on my tongue. "Good. There is much to discuss." She gestured to the seats beside her. "Join us for the morning meal." As we settled at the high table, servants brought platters of food, hearty northern fare designed to sustain people through long winter days. The Queen waited until they had withdrawn before speaking again, her voice pitched low for our ears alone. "The storm last night was unlike any we've seen in months," she said. "The curse is aware of your presence, Ara. It responds to the threat you represent." "How can a curse be unaware?" I asked, still struggling to understand the nature of what we faced. "This is no ordinary curse," Thorn explained, his expression grim. "The witch who cast it bound it to ancient powers, older than our kind. It has become a living thing, feeding on the land's vitality, growing stronger as our people grow weaker." Queen Dogger nodded. "Which is why your training must begin immediately. The pendant protected you from the curse's influence all these years, but now you stand revealed. It will seek to eliminate you before you can grow into your power." My appetite vanished. And how exactly am I supposed to fight something I can barely comprehend? "With the gifts of your bloodline," she replied. "The same gifts the curse has sought to suppress." Lyra left provisions for this day. Journals, texts, tools to guide her successor. "Successor?" I echoed, the word heavy with implications I wasn't sure I was ready to face. "You are the last of the Blackthorn line," Queen Dagger said simply. "The mantle passes to you, whether you feel prepared or not." A commotion at the hall's entrance interrupted our conversation. A group of warriors burst through the doors, supporting between them a man whose clothing was torn and bloody. Frost clung to his beard and eyebrows, and his skin held an unnatural bluish tint. Thorn was on his feet instantly. "Ragnar, what happened?" The wounded man coughed, a sound like breaking ice. Grey Walkers, my king. They attacked our patrol at the western boundary, more organized than we've ever seen them. They spoke of the outsider who would break the curse. They're hunting her. All eyes in the hall turned to me. Thorn's expression darkened as he issued rapid commands for the wounded man to be taken to the healers and for defensive patrols to be doubled. It begins sooner than we expected, Queen Dagger murmured, her lips pressed into a thin line. What begins? I asked, though I feared I already knew the answer. The curse defending itself, Thorn replied, his voice tight with controlled anger, using those who've fallen under its influence as weapons. The Grey Walkers were once normal wolves, the Queen explained, noting my confusion. Pack members who ventured too far into cursed areas and stayed too long. The winter takes them, changes them. They become extensions of the curse's will. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the northern climate. And they're looking for me specifically? Thorn nodded grimly. The curse has identified you as its primary threat. But I've done nothing yet, I protested. I've only just learned who I am. It's not what you've done, Queen Dagger said softly. It's what you might become. After the morning's grim revelations, I was led to a circular chamber deep within the keep, a room dedicated to the study and practice of a seer's gifts. Bookshelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, filled with ancient tomes on visions, prophecies, and the mysteries of the Blackthorn bloodline. A large table dominated the center, its surface inlaid with silver symbols similar to those in the tower room. This was your grandmother's workroom, Queen Dagger explained as she guided me inside. Before her, it belonged to her mother, and her mother's mother, going back generations. I ran my fingers along the edge of the table, feeling a subtle vibration beneath my touch. What am I supposed to do here? Learn, she said simply. Begin to understand the legacy that flows in your veins. For hours, she guided me through Lyra's journals, decades of recorded visions, interpretations, and the techniques she had developed to control her gifts. The earliest entries were written in a youthful, exuberant hand, full of wonder at newly discovered abilities. These gave way to more measured accounts as Lyra matured into her role as the pack's seer. The final entries, written shortly before her abduction, were filled with growing concern about the witch from the Western Territories. She brings shadows with her, one passage read. I see winter in her wake, endless and cruel, but the king will not heed my warnings. He sees only the power she offers, not the price we will pay. She knew, I murmured, tracing the words with my fingertip. She foresaw everything. Not everything, Queen Dagger corrected. Even the strongest seer cannot see all paths. Lyra saw the curse coming, but not her own abduction. The future is never fixed, Ara. It shifts with each choice we make. As the day progressed, I struggled to absorb the wealth of information. The journals spoke of techniques for inducing visions, methods for interpreting symbolic imagery, ways to distinguish between possible futures and inevitable ones. Some passages described rituals involving herbs, crystals, and moon phases that could enhance a seer's natural abilities. By late afternoon, my head throbbed with the effort of concentration. Just as I was about to ask for a respite, the door opened, and Thorn entered, his expression grave. Another patrol has encountered Grey Walkers, he announced without preamble. Closer to the keep this time, they're growing bolder. Queen Dagger's lips thinned. We're running out of time. For what? I asked, anxiety gnawing at my stomach. Instead of answering directly, the Queen turned to one of the bookshelves and removed a slim volume bound in dark blue leather. She placed it before me, opening it to a page marked with a silver ribbon. The text was written in an ancient form of our language, barely decipherable, but an illustration on the opposite page caught my attention. A woman standing in a circle of moonlight, arms outstretched, surrounded by swirling snow that seemed to bend to her will. The Rite of Awakening, Queen Dagger explained, a ritual traditionally performed when a Blackthorn seer comes into her full power. It requires the full moon, certain preparations, and considerable risk. What kind of risk? I asked, studying the illustration more closely. The ritual temporarily removes all barriers between a seer and her gifts, Thorn said, his voice tight with concern. It can exponentially increase your abilities, allowing you to connect directly with the land itself. And potentially with the curse, the Queen added, which is both the danger and the opportunity. To break the curse, you must first understand it. From the inside, the implication sent a shiver through me. You want me to connect with the thing that's trying to kill me? To overcome an enemy, you must know it, Thorn said simply. The full moon is 3 nights from now, Queen Dagger continued. We had hoped for more time to prepare you, but with the Grey Walkers growing more aggressive, we may not have that luxury. 3 nights, I echoed faintly. 3 nights to learn how to be something I've never been, to prepare for a ritual I don't understand, to face a curse that's existed for generations. You won't face it alone, Thorn said, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. I'll be with you every step. As will I, the Queen added, and there is another who may help. She exchanged a significant look with her son. Who? I asked, looking between them. Someone who knew Lyra better than anyone, Thorn replied. Someone who has been waiting for this moment as long as we have. Before I could press for more details, a thunderous boom echoed through the keep, powerful enough to shake dust from the ceiling. Thorn was moving instantly, striding toward the door with the fluid grace of a predator. Stay here, he commanded over his shoulder. Both of you. Naturally, we followed him. The source of the disturbance became clear as we reached the main hall. The massive front doors of Blackfrost Keep were under assault, the ancient wood splintering under repeated impacts. Warriors scrambled to reinforce the barrier, but the doors bulged inward with each new blow. Grey Walkers shouldn't have this kind of strength, Thorn growled, drawing his sword. It's not just Grey Walkers, Queen Dagger said grimly, pointing to the gaps appearing between the door planks. Through the widening cracks, I glimpsed not the gray-furred creatures I had expected, but something far more terrifying. Figures shaped like men, but formed entirely of ice, their bodies translucent, their eyes glowing with an eerie blue light. Ice wraiths, the Queen whispered. The curse is sending its strongest servants. As the words left her mouth, the doors finally gave way with a deafening crack. Ice wraiths poured into the entrance hall, their movements unnaturally fluid for creatures made of frozen water. Behind them came the Grey Walkers, wolves with matted gray fur and eyes clouded by the same unnatural blue glow. Thorn roared a command, and his warriors surged forward to meet the invaders. The clash of steel against ice filled the air, along with the snarls and howls of fighting wolves. Get her to safety, Thorn shouted to his mother, never taking his eyes from the battle as he waded into the fray. Queen Dagger gripped my arm, pulling me toward a side passage. Come, there's a place they cannot reach. As she dragged me away from the main hall, I caught a final glimpse of Thorn, his sword flashing as he battled an ice wraith. The creature shattered under his blow, only to reform moments later, its jagged limbs reaching for the Northern King. The last thing I heard before Queen Dagger pulled me into the passage was Thorn's battle cry, not of rage or fear, but a sound of pure defiance against the curse that had plagued his people for too long. Queen Dagger led me through a maze of narrow passages that seemed to descend deep into the mountain beneath Blackfrost Keep. The sounds of battle faded behind us, replaced by an oppressive silence broken only by our hurried footsteps and ragged breathing. Where are we going? I gasped as we rounded yet another corner. The Heart Chamber, she replied without slowing, the oldest part of the keep, built around the sacred spring that has sustained our people for generations. The curse cannot touch it directly. After what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes, we reached a massive door carved from pale wood that seemed to glow with an inner light. Ancient symbols covered its surface, similar to those in the seer's workroom but older, more primal. Queen Dagger placed her palm against the center of the door and murmured words in a language I didn't recognize. The symbols flared briefly, and the door swung open silently. The chamber beyond took my breath away. A perfect circular room, its domed ceiling embedded with crystals that caught and reflected light from an unexpected source. A pool of water at the center, glowing with a soft blue radiance. Unlike the harsh magical light of the ice wraiths, this illumination felt warm, welcoming. The air was surprisingly mild, carrying the scent of spring water and ancient stone. This spring has never frozen, Queen Dagger said, her voice softening with reverence. Not even in the deepest grip of the curse. It is the last truly living part of our land. As we approached the pool, I felt a strange pull, as if the water itself were calling to me. Without conscious thought, I moved forward until I stood at the edge, gazing into depths that seemed to go on forever. "What is this place?" I whispered, unable to look away from the shimmering water. "The source of the blackthorn gift," she replied. "Your ancestors discovered this spring when they first came to these mountains. They drank from its waters and were changed. The ability to see beyond the present moment became their blessing and their burden." A noise from the entrance made us both turn. A figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the darkness of the passage. For one hopeful moment, I thought it might be Thorn, but as the figure stepped into the light of the chamber, I saw it was Freya, her face streaked with blood, her braids in disarray. "My queen!" she gasped, dropping to one knee. "The keep is overrun. The king sent me to protect you both. He and the others are falling back to the Great Hall." Queen Dagger's face drained of color. "The numbers?" "Too many," Freya said grimly. "More arrive with each passing minute. It's as if the entire forest has turned against us." "And Thorn?" I asked, my heart constricting. "Fighting," Freya replied simply. "As he always does." The queen's expression hardened with resolve. "Then we have no choice. The ritual must happen now." "Now!" I echoed, panic rising in my chest. "But you said the full moon is 3 days hence, yes. The ritual would be stronger then, but we no longer have that luxury." She turned to Freya. "Can you hold the door?" The warrior nodded grimly. "With my life." Queen Dagger approached the edge of the pool, kneeling to dip her hand in the glowing water. "This spring connects to the life force of our land. Through it, you may access powers that would normally require the full moon's strength." "What do I need to do?" I asked, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. "You must immerse yourself completely," she said. "The waters will strip away the last lingering effects of the pendant's protection and fully awaken your gifts. But Ara," her expression grew grave, "once begun, this cannot be stopped. The visions will come, powerful and overwhelming. You must surrender to them. Let them flow through you." "And if I can't?" I asked, voicing the fear that had been growing since I first learned of my heritage. "Then the curse wins," she said simply, "and we all fall." From the corridor beyond the door came the sounds of pursuit, the hiss of ice wraiths and the growls of gray walkers. Freya took up position, drawing her sword with grim determination. "They're coming," she warned. There was no more time for doubt or preparation. With shaking hands, I removed my boots and outer garments until I stood in only my shift. The pool's edge was smooth stone, worn by generations of hands. As I prepared to step into the water, Queen Dagger grasped my arm. "Remember, whatever you see, whatever you experience, it is showing you paths, possibilities. None are fixed until choices are made." I nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped into the pool. The water was neither warm nor cold, but seemed to shift between temperatures with each ripple. I waded deeper until the water reached my waist, then my shoulders. The glow intensified around me, the blue light pulsing in time with my heartbeat. "Now," Queen Dagger called from the edge, "you must submerge completely." Taking one last breath, I closed my eyes and sank beneath the surface. The world exploded into light and sensation. No longer was I in a pool within Black Frost Keep. I was everywhere at once. I flew over snow-covered forests, dove into frozen lakes, raced across mountain peaks. The land, all of it, flowed through me like blood through veins, and within it all, I felt the curse. A dark, strangling presence wrapped around every tree, every stone, every living creature. It was ancient and cold, and filled with a hatred I couldn't comprehend. Beneath that hatred lay something else. Fear. The curse feared me. Feared what I represented, what I might become. Images flooded my mind. Thorn as a child, watching his father wither under the curse's influence. The witch who had cast the spell. Her face twisted with rejected love turned to hatred. My grandmother Lyra, fighting against her captors as they dragged her from her home. My mother, growing up in a pack not her own, never knowing her true heritage. And then, cutting through it all, a vision so vivid it felt more real than reality itself. Thorn, standing alone on a field of ice, surrounded by shattered ice wraiths and fallen gray walkers, his sword raised against a swirling darkness that took the form of a woman made of winter itself. Blood streamed from countless wounds, freezing on his skin, yet still he fought, his eyes burning with golden fire. He was losing. With a gasp, I broke the surface of the pool, water streaming from my hair and clothes. Queen Dagger stood exactly as I had left her, though it felt as if years had passed. "Thorn," I gasped. "He's in danger. The curse. It's manifesting physically." Before she could respond, the door to the chamber burst open. Freya lay crumpled on the floor, unconscious or worse. In the doorway stood an ice wraith larger than any I had glimpsed before. Unlike the others, this one had a face, cruel and beautiful, with features that seemed vaguely familiar. "The witch," Queen Dagger whispered, horror and recognition in her voice. "She's taken form through her curse." The ice wraith smiled, the expression chilling in its mockery of human emotion. When it spoke, its voice was like the cracking of a glacier. "Little seer," it hissed. "Little threat. Did you think I wouldn't find you? That I wouldn't sense your meddling in my domain?" I stepped out of the pool, water streaming from my clothes, but I felt no cold. Instead, a warmth radiated from my core, a power I'd never experienced before, awakened by the sacred waters. "Your domain?" I echoed, finding courage in this new strength. "These lands don't belong to you." The creature laughed, the sound like breaking ice. "They have been mine for 30 years. The people are mine. The king is mine, and soon you will join them. Another frozen trophy in my collection." It advanced into the chamber, ice forming on the stone floor with each step. Queen Dagger moved to stand between us, but with a casual gesture, the ice wraith sent her flying across the room. She struck the wall with a sickening thud and slumped to the ground. Rage flooded through me, not the impotent anger I'd felt so often in Alaric's pack, but something primal and powerful. The water from my soaked clothing began to steam. "You've taken enough," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You won't take any more." The creature's eyes narrowed. "What would you know of taking little Omega? I had everything stolen from me. Love, respect, dignity. Your precious king's father saw me as nothing but a tool, useful for my power but unworthy of his heart. So you punished an entire people for one man's rejection." I took a step forward, noticing with surprise that where my bare feet touched the stone floor, tiny green shoots pushed through cracks. The first new growth these stones had seen in decades. The ice wraith hissed at the sight. "They chose him, followed him. They deserve the winter." Another step. More green shoots, spreading outward from my footprints. "And Thorn? The children born under your curse? What did they do to deserve this?" "They are his blood," the creature snarled. "All who bear the name Frost must suffer as I suffered." "Your suffering is over," I said quietly. "It's time to let go." With a scream of rage, the ice wraith lunged at me, its crystalline fingers extended like claws. I should have been terrified, should have tried to flee, but something deeper than conscious thought guided me. I stood my ground and raised my hands. The moment the creature touched me, steam erupted between us. It recoiled with a shriek, its fingers melting where they had made contact with my skin. "What is this?" it howled, genuine fear in its voice for the first time. I looked down at my hands in wonder. They glowed with the same blue light as the sacred pool, but warmer, tinged with green and gold. "The land remembers what you made it forget," I said, the words coming from somewhere beyond my conscious mind. Spring, life, renewal. The ice wraith backed away, but I followed, driven by instinct and the power flowing through me. With each step I took forward, the creature retreated, its form beginning to lose cohesion, water dripping from its icy limbs. "You cannot undo what I have created," it snarled, but there was desperation in its voice. "The curse is bound to the bloodline. As long as a frost rules these lands, winter remains." Then perhaps it's time for a new rule, came a deep voice from the doorway. Thorn stood there, bloodied but unbowed, his sword hanging loosely at his side. His gaze moved from the ice wraith to me, and his eyes widened at the sight of the glowing light emanating from my skin, the green shoots spreading from my feet. The ice wraith took advantage of the distraction to lunge at him, reforming its melting limbs into deadly ice spikes. Without thinking, I threw myself forward, placing my body between the creature and Thorn. The impact never came. Instead, as the ice wraith touched me, its form shuddered and began to dissolve, melting into ordinary water that splashed harmlessly to the stone floor. A wail of rage and despair echoed through the chamber as the last remnants of the creature dissolved. For a moment, there was silence broken only by our ragged breathing. Then Thorn stepped forward, his eyes never leaving my face. "Ara," he whispered. "What did you do?" "I don't know," I admitted, looking down at my still glowing hands. "The pool. It showed me things. I saw the land as it once was, as it could be again. I felt the curse, understood it." Thorn moved cautiously to my side, his eyes filled with wonder. "You're radiating heat," he observed, reaching out but stopping just short of touching me. "Like summer." I nodded, feeling the warmth flowing through me, a stark contrast to the perpetual cold that had gripped these lands for so long. The witch, her hatred was the foundation of the curse, but her power came from the land itself. She twisted it, forced it to serve her vengeance. Queen Dagger stirred, pushing herself up from where she had fallen. Thorn rushed to help his mother, supporting her as she rose unsteadily to her feet. "The manifestation," she said, her voice hoarse. "Is it truly gone?" "For now," I replied, somehow certain of this. "But the curse itself remains." What we faced was just an echo of the witch, given form by the curse's power. To break it completely, I hesitated, the knowledge gained in the pool still settling into my conscious mind. "Tell us," Thorn urged. "The witch spoke the truth in her way," I said slowly. "The curse is bound to the frost bloodline. As long as a frost rules these lands, winter remains." Queen Dagger's face fell. "Then we are lost. My son cannot abdicate his responsibility to his people." "No," I agreed. "But perhaps there's another way to interpret the curse's conditions." A commotion at the door interrupted us as Freya regained consciousness, struggling to her feet with a groan. Behind her came several of Thorn's warriors, bloodied but triumphant. "The ice wraiths," one reported. "They've all collapsed, melted away like spring thaw. The Grey Walkers have fled into the forest." Hope flickered across Thorn's face. "The curse weakens?" "Temporarily," I cautioned. What I did, what the sacred pool allowed me to do, was disrupt the curse's manifestation, but not break its foundation. I looked directly at Thorn, a realization forming. "We need to return to the seer's chamber. There's something I need to see." Despite the confusion still reigning throughout the keep, we made our way back to the tower where I had first removed the pendant. The path was littered with puddles of water, all that remained of the ice wraiths, and the occasional blood stain where defenders had fallen. The enormity of what had happened, of what was still at stake, weighed heavily upon me. In the seer's chamber, the fire had died to embers, but as I entered, it flared back to life as if responding to the warmth still radiating from my skin. I moved directly to the large table with its silver inlays, running my fingers over the symbols that now seemed to speak to me in a language beyond words. "The final entry in my grandmother's journal," I said, turning to Queen Dagger. "The prophecy about the Forgotten One. I need to see the exact wording." She retrieved the journal from a shelf, flipping to the last written page. I read the words aloud. "Only when the Forgotten One is remembered, when the scentless carries the sweetest perfume, will the ice retreat and the sun return." "We've assumed this referred simply to my return," I said slowly, "to the removal of the pendant that masked my nature. But what if there's more?" I closed my eyes, calling upon the visions I had experienced in the sacred pool. Images flashed through my mind, the northern lands in summer, children playing beneath blossoming trees, Thorn standing on a balcony watching over his people, and beside him, a figure I couldn't quite make out. When I opened my eyes again, Both Thorn and his mother were watching me with expectation and concern. "The curse binds the frost bloodline to eternal winter," I said carefully. "But curses, especially those rooted in rejected love, often contain loopholes, conditions for breaking them that the caster includes, consciously or not." "What loophole?" Thorn asked, moving closer. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. What if the curse doesn't end by removing a Frost from power, but by adding another bloodline to the ruling line, by joining Frost and Blackthorn? Understanding dawned in Queen Dogger's eyes. "A union," she whispered. "Of course." Thorn stood very still, his expression unreadable as he processed my words. "You're suggesting marriage," he said finally. "A political alliance to satisfy the curse's conditions." His tone stung more than I wanted to admit. "It's just a theory," I said quickly, "based on what I saw in the visions, what I felt when confronting the ice wraith." "It makes sense," Queen Dagger interjected. "The witch cursed the frost line out of rejected love. What better counter to such a curse than a union born of genuine choice? The symmetry would be powerful." Thorn's eyes never left my face. "And is that what this would be? A union of genuine choice?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. Since the moment our eyes had met in Alaric's council chamber, I had felt drawn to him in ways I couldn't explain. But was it real, or merely the pull of prophecy and curse, forcing us together for purposes beyond our control? "I don't know," I answered honestly. 3 days ago, I was a kitchen girl with no future. Now I'm supposedly the key to saving an entire territory. How can I know what's genuine and what's destined? A shadow passed over his features. Exactly. Queen Dagger looked between us, sensing the tension. Perhaps this is a discussion best continued after rest and reflection. The immediate threat has passed, but we must remain vigilant. The curse may be weakened, but it is not broken. As if to emphasize her point, a gust of wind rattled the tower windows, bringing with it a flurry of snow. A reminder that winter still held these lands in its grip. "I'll have guards posted at your door," Thorn said formally, his earlier warmth now carefully contained. "Rest. Regain your strength. Tomorrow, we'll discuss our next steps." With that, he turned and left the chamber, his shoulders rigid beneath his bloodied shirt. Queen Dagger gave me a sympathetic look before following her son, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts. Back in my grandmother's room, I sank onto the bed, exhaustion finally catching up with me. The power that had flowed through me in the heart chamber had receded, leaving me drained but changed. I could still feel it, a quiet hum beneath my skin, waiting to be called upon again. As I drifted towards sleep, my mind returned to Thorn's question. Was this a union of genuine choice? The pull I felt toward him was undeniable, but how much was my own heart, and how much was the curse manipulating us both? The answer came not in words, but in a vision as sleep claimed me. Thorn and I standing in a field of wildflowers, snow-capped mountains in the distance, our hands joined not by obligation, but by something deeper, something that had nothing to do with curses or prophecies and everything to do with two people who had found in each other what they had been missing all their lives. When I woke the next morning, weak sunlight filtered through the windows, the first true sunlight these lands had seen in months. A small crack in the curse's hold, perhaps, but a significant one. A soft knock at the door preceded the entrance of a servant bringing breakfast and news that the Queen Dagger requested my presence in the great hall once I had eaten. I dressed quickly in another of the gowns from the chest, this one a deep forest green with silver embroidery, and made my way downstairs. The keep hummed with activity as servants cleaned up the aftermath of the previous night's battle and warriors tended to the wounded. Despite the losses, there was an undercurrent of hope in the air, the first taste of victory against the curse in generations. In the great hall, I found not just Queen Dagger, but what appeared to be the entire northern court assembled. Thorn sat on a massive throne carved from dark wood, his expression guarded as I entered. Beside him stood an empty throne of similar design, but smaller proportions. The hall fell silent as I approached. Queen Dagger, seated to Thorn's right, gave me an encouraging nod. "Ara Blackthorn," Thorn announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "Step forward." Heart pounding, I moved to stand before him, acutely aware of the hundreds of eyes upon me. "Last night," he continued, "you faced the physical manifestation of the curse that has plagued our lands for generations. You displayed courage and power beyond what anyone could have expected. For this, the North owes you a debt of gratitude." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled crowd. "However," and here his voice took on a more formal tone, "the curse remains. Your theory about breaking it permanently through a union of our bloodlines is compelling." I held my breath, unsure where this was leading. "But I will not use marriage as a political tool," Thorn declared, rising from his throne. "Not even to save my people. Such a union must be entered freely, with full hearts on both sides, or it would be no better than the loveless arrangement the witch herself was offered." The hall erupted in whispers. Queen Dagger's expression remained carefully neutral, though I detected a flicker of approval in her eyes. As for me, I stood frozen, torn between relief that Thorn wouldn't force a political marriage and uncertainty about what this meant for the future, both mine and the North's. Thorn raised a hand, and the hall fell silent once more. "There is, however, another way," he continued, his eyes meeting mine. "The sacred texts speak of a ritual, the binding of lands, performed in ancient times when two pacts joined territories. It requires representatives of both bloodlines working in concert, their powers combined but their futures their own to determine. The binding hasn't been performed in centuries," Queen Dagger added, addressing the court. "It requires tremendous power and carries significant risk to those who undertake it." "What kind of risk?" I asked, finding my voice at last. Thorn's expression softened slightly. "The ritual connects the participants directly to the land itself. They become conduits for its power that could overwhelm them if not properly channeled. In the worst case," the Queen continued, "the land could consume them entirely, absorbing their life force to heal itself." A chill ran through me, despite the warmth I still felt humming beneath my skin. "And in the best case, the curse breaks," Thorn said simply. "The natural order is restored. Spring returns to the North, and the participants, if successful, they emerge changed but whole." His eyes held mine, their connection to the land permanently altered, but their lives their own. I considered this alternative. No forced marriage, but still tremendous risk. When would this ritual take place? "At the winter solstice," Queen Dagger replied. "The longest night, when the curse is at its strongest but also at its most vulnerable. 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks. Time to prepare, to learn more about my abilities, to make a genuine choice rather than one forced by immediate necessity." "I will consider it," I said carefully. "But first, I need to understand more about what's involved." Thorn nodded, something like respect flickering in his eyes. "Of course, in the meantime," he gestured to a woman standing nearby who stepped forward carrying something wrapped in blue velvet. "I believe this belongs to you." She unwrapped the bundle to reveal a silver circlet, set with small blue stones that sparkled like stars. "The blackthorn crown," Queen Dagger explained, "worn by the head of your family for generations before Lyra was taken. It's rightfully yours now." I stared at the circlet, another piece of my heritage I'd never known existed. "I don't know how to be what you need me to be," I admitted, my voice low enough that only Thorn and his mother could hear. "A seer, a blackthorn heir, a savior." "No one is born knowing their purpose," Thorn replied, equally quiet. "We learn by doing, by failing, by trying again. You've already shown more courage than many who've trained their whole lives for such roles." With gentle hands, the Queen took the circlet and placed it upon my head. The metal was cool against my skin for only a moment before warming, as if recognizing its rightful owner. A hushed awe fell over the hall. "Lady Aura Blackthorn," Thorn announced to the court. "Last of her line, seer of the North, and our greatest hope against the curse that has held us for too long." The northern wolves knelt as one, even Queen Dagger inclining her head in respect. Only Thorn remained standing, his eyes never leaving mine. In that moment, something shifted between us. No longer king and rescued Omega, no longer captor and captive, but equals bound by a common purpose and perhaps something more. The weeks that followed were filled with intense preparation. Each day, I spent hours in the seer's chamber, studying my grandmother's journals and practicing the techniques she had developed to control her visions. Queen Dagger proved a patient teacher, guiding me through meditation exercises and rituals designed to strengthen my connection to my gifts. Thorn, meanwhile, oversaw the preparations for the binding ritual. Ancient texts were retrieved from the deepest vaults of Blackfrost Keep, their brittle pages carefully examined for any detail that might increase our chances of success. The site for the ritual, a clearing in the heart of the sacred grove where the first Frost had made his pact with the wolf spirits, was prepared with stones arranged in precise patterns. Throughout these preparations, Thorn and I maintained a careful distance. Our interactions were cordial but reserved, both of us seemingly uncertain how to navigate the complex currents between us. The pull I felt toward him hadn't diminished. If anything, it had grown stronger, but I resisted it, determined that whatever choice I ultimately made would be truly mine. 10 days before the solstice, I was meditating in the seer's chamber when a vision struck with such force that I gasped aloud. Unlike the fragmented images I'd grown accustomed to, this was crystal clear. Alaric, leading a war party through the snow-covered forest at the border of Northern Territory. His face was twisted with rage and determination. When I emerged from the vision, I found Thorn standing in the doorway, concern etched on his features. "What did you see?" he asked, crossing the room to kneel before me. "Alaric," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "He's coming, with warriors." Thorn's expression hardened. "When?" "Soon. Days, not weeks." He rose in one fluid motion. "I'll send scouts to the southern border immediately." "Wait." I caught his hand, the first time I'd initiated contact between us since the night of the Ice Wraith attack. "There's more. He's not alone. He has something with him. Someone. A witch, I think." Thorn went very still. "Describe her." I closed my eyes, recalling the fleeting glimpse I'd caught in my vision. Young, with hair like fire and eyes too old for her face. She wears a pendant of black iron around her neck. "The witch's apprentice," Queen Dagger said from the doorway, her face pale. "We've heard rumors that the original cursecaster had taken a student before she died, but never had confirmation." "If Alaric has allied with her," Thorn began. "Then he knows about the binding ritual," I finished, "and he's coming to stop it." The next days passed in a blur of preparations, not just for the ritual now, but for the defense of Blackfrost Keep. Warriors were recalled from outlying settlements, weapons were forged and sharpened, and the ancient protective wards around the keep were strengthened. Through it all, my training continued with increased urgency. Queen Dagger pushed me harder than ever, often working with me deep into the night. My powers grew stronger with each passing day, my visions clearer, my understanding of the land and its connection to my bloodline deeper. 4 days before the solstice, the scouts returned with confirmation of my vision. Alaric and a force of 30 warriors were indeed approaching from the south, accompanied by a red-haired woman who matched my description of the witch's apprentice. They would reach Blackfrost Keep by the following day. That night, unable to sleep, I found myself wandering to the battlements. The air was crisp and cold, the sky above clearer than it had been in months. More stars were visible now, another small victory against the curse's hold. I wasn't surprised to find Thorn already there, gazing out at the snow-covered mountains that surrounded his kingdom. He acknowledged my presence with a nod, but remained silent as I joined him at the wall. "What will you do when Alaric arrives?" I asked finally. "Hear what he has to say," Thorn replied. "Then likely refuse whatever demands he makes." "And if he attempts to take me by force?" Thorn's jaw tightened. "He won't succeed." The simple certainty in his voice warmed me more than any fire could have. We stood in companionable silence for several minutes before he spoke again. "Are you afraid? Of the ritual?" I considered the question carefully. "Yes," I admitted, "but not enough to refuse to try." He turned to face me fully then, his silver gold eyes reflecting the starlight. "Why?" "You owe us nothing. This isn't your curse to break, isn't it?" I countered. "My grandmother foresaw it. My bloodline is part of the solution." And besides, I added softly, these are my people too. I feel it more with each passing day. Something in his expression shifted, a barrier lowering. When I found you in Alaric's pack, I thought you were the answer to a prophecy, nothing more. A means to an end. And now, I asked, my heart beating faster despite the cold. Now I see you, Aura Blackthorn. He took a step closer. Not just what you represent or what you might do, but who you are. Your strength, your compassion, your willingness to risk everything for people who were strangers to you weeks ago. He reached out slowly, giving me time to withdraw if I wished. When I didn't, his fingers brushed my cheek with a gentleness that belied his warrior's hands. Whatever happens with the ritual, whatever you choose after, know that my respect and admiration for you have nothing to do with prophecies or curses. Before I could respond, a horn sounded from the northern watchtower. 3 long blasts followed by 2 short ones. Thorn's head snapped up, his expression shifting from tenderness to alarm in an instant. That's not possible, he muttered. The scout said Alaric was approaching from the south. Another series of horn blasts, this time from the eastern tower. We're surrounded, I realized. It's not just Alaric. Thorn was already moving, shouting orders to the guards nearby. I followed him down to the great hall, where warriors were gathering, hastily donning armor and checking weapons. Reports from all 4 watchtowers, Freya announced as we entered. War parties approaching from every direction. Northern wolves to the north, western packs from the west, southern and eastern coming up the main road. How is this possible? Queen Dagger demanded. These packs have been enemies for generations. The witch's apprentice, I said, the realization dawning. She's united them against us. Against me. Thorn's expression was grim but determined. How long until they reach us? Hours at most, Freya replied. They're moving quickly through the snow. Then we prepare to defend the keep, Thorn decided. Barricade the gates, position archers on the walls, ready the oil for boiling. No, I said, the word escaping before I'd fully formed the thought behind it. That's exactly what they expect us to do. To wait, to defend, to delay until the solstice has passed and our chance is lost. What alternative do you suggest? Thorn asked, turning to me with surprising deference. We perform the ritual now, I said. Tonight. Queen Dagger gasped. 3 days before the solstice? The risk is already enormous, I finished for her. But waiting only guarantees failure. If we act now, while the witch's apprentice believes she has time, we might catch her unprepared. Thorn studied my face, searching for doubt and finding none. The preparations at the sacred grove aren't complete. Then we'll use the heart chamber, I countered, the sacred spring. Its power has sustained this land even through the curse. It should be enough. A long moment passed as Thorn considered, the sounds of preparations for battle echoing around us. Finally he nodded. Prepare the heart chamber, he ordered Freya, and buy us as much time as you can against the approaching forces. As warriors rushed to carry out his commands, Thorn turned to me. Are you certain about this? The ritual is dangerous enough under ideal conditions, like this. I've never been more certain of anything, I replied, and it was true. Whatever doubts I'd harbored about my place here, my role in this struggle, had vanished. This was my purpose, my choice, freely made. Queen Dagger approached, carrying a bundle wrapped in ancient cloth. If you're determined to do this, you'll need these. She unwrapped the bundle to reveal 2 ceremonial daggers, their blades made not of steel, but of some crystalline material that seemed to capture and reflect light from within. Their hilts were wrapped in leather darkened with age, one bearing the symbol of the Frost bloodline, the other, the Blackthorn crest. Blood of the land, blood of the bloodlines, she explained. The final component of the ritual. Thorn took the frost dagger, its crystalline blade gleaming against his palm. How much time do you need to prepare? He asked me. An hour, I replied, thinking of the meditation techniques Queen Dagger had taught me, the mental state I would need to achieve. No more. He nodded grimly. Then we meet at the heart chamber in 1 hour. and may the old gods watch over us all. The hour passed in a blur of focused preparation. I returned to my grandmother's room one last time, drawing strength from the connection I felt to her within those walls. I changed into a simple white shift provided by Queen Dagger, traditional attire for a seer performing a major ritual, and wore my blackthorn circlet. Around my neck, I placed not my protective pendant, but my father's wooden wolf carving, a reminder of where I had come from and what I fought for. When I descended to the heart chamber, I found it transformed. The glowing pool at the center now sat within a circle of candles, their flames burning with unusual colors: blue, silver, green, gold. Symbols had been painted on the stone floor in what appeared to be a mixture of ash and blood. Queen Dagger stood at the edge of the circle, grinding herbs in a mortar of black stone. And in the center, beside the pool, waited Thorn. He too had changed into ritual clothing, simple black trousers and an open shirt of undyed linen that revealed the intricate tattoos covering his chest and arms, symbols of his bloodline and his role as Alpha King. The frost dagger hung at his waist, its crystal blade catching the light from the pool. As I entered the chamber, our eyes met, and in that moment, I felt the connection between us more strongly than ever, not just physical attraction or the pull of compatible wolf natures, but something deeper, a recognition of kindred spirits bound by duty, purpose, and growing affection. "You're sure?" he asked one final time as I approached. I nodded, taking the blackthorn dagger Queen Dagger offered me. "I'm sure." From above came the distant sounds of battle. The approaching forces had reached the keep's outer defenses. We had little time. Queen Dagger moved to stand at the head of the pool, raising her arms as she began to chant in the ancient language of our people. The candles flared higher, their colorful flames stretching toward the domed ceiling. Thorn and I took our positions on opposite sides of the pool, the glowing water between us casting otherworldly light on our faces. "The ritual is simple in form, but complex in essence," Queen Dagger explained, her voice taking on a ritualistic cadence. "You will each offer your blood to the pool, blood of your bloodlines, carrying the history and power of your ancestors. Then you must immerse yourselves completely, allowing the waters to connect you to the land and to each other." She looked from Thorn to me, her expression grave. "Within the waters, you will confront the curse directly. You must find its root, not just the witch's hatred but the imbalance it created, and restore harmony. If you succeed, spring returns. If you fail..." She didn't need to finish the thought. We all knew the stakes. "Begin," she commanded, stepping back from the pool's edge. Thorn drew his crystalline dagger across his palm without hesitation, his expression unwavering as blood welled from the cut. I followed suit, wincing slightly at the sting but keeping my hand steady. Together, we held our bleeding palms over the pool, allowing our blood to drip into the glowing waters. Where the droplets touched the surface, ripples of gold and silver spread outward, meeting and intertwining in complex patterns. The glow intensified, pulsing now like a heartbeat, the heartbeat of the land itself. "Now," Queen Dagger whispered. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the pool, the water warm against my skin. Across from me, Thorn did the same. We waded toward each other until we stood face to face in the center, the water reaching our waists. "Whatever happens," Thorn said softly, "know that meeting you has been worth every moment of the curse that led us here." Before I could respond, he took my hands in his, our bleeding palms pressed together. And together we sank beneath the surface. The world exploded into light and sensation, just as it had during my first immersion, but exponentially more intense. I was everywhere and nowhere, my consciousness expanding to encompass mountains and valleys, forests and rivers. Beside me, through me, I felt Thorn's presence, his strength, his determination, his unwavering love for his land and people. And then we found it, the curse's heart. Not just the witch's spell, but the wound it had created in the very fabric of the land, a tear in the natural order that had festered and grown over generations. The land itself had been wounded by the curse, and that wound had allowed the winter to take hold beyond its natural season. "We need to heal it," Thorn's voice echoed in my mind, though no words had been spoken. But how? The answer came not in thoughts, but in instinct. Together, our consciousnesses intertwined, we reached toward the wound. Where Thorn's essence touched it, strength flowed into the damaged land. Where mine connected, vision and renewal followed. Separately, neither would have been enough. Together, we began to knit the torn fabric back together, thread by metaphysical thread. The curse fought back viciously. Cold, unlike anything I'd ever experienced, tore through us, seeking to freeze our very souls. Visions of despair and failure assailed our minds, Thorn watching his people starve, me returned to Alaric's pack as a broken shell, the North consumed by eternal darkness. But with each attack, our resolve strengthened. We pushed harder, reaching deeper, our combined essence flowing into every crack and crevice of the wounded land. As we worked, I became aware of something else, a third presence joining our efforts. Ancient, wise, familiar. "Grandmother?" I called into the void. No direct answer came, but I felt a surge of warmth and power, supporting and guiding our efforts. Not just Lyra, I realized, but all the Blackthorn seers who had come before, lending their strength across the veil of death. With this ancestral power bolstering our own, we made the final push. The wound in the land began to close, slowly at first, then faster. As it healed, something shifted in the fundamental balance of the North, cold giving way to warmth, darkness to light, despair to hope. The curse shattered with a sound that existed beyond physical hearing, a crystalline breaking that reverberated through the land itself. Its fragments dispersed, no longer able to maintain cohesion without the wound to anchor them. As the last vestiges of the curse dissipated, I felt myself being pulled back toward my physical form, Thorn's presence still intertwined with mine. Before we fully separated, a vision flashed between us, the northern lands in full summer bloom, Black Frost Keep gleaming in sunlight, and walking through a meadow of wildflowers, hand in hand, the two of us with a small, dark-haired child between us, a possible future, not a certain one, but a future full of hope. We broke the surface of the pool, gasping for air, our hands still clasped together. Queen Dagger stood at the edge, tears streaming down her face as she stared not at us, but at something beyond the chamber walls. "It's done," she whispered. "The curse is broken." Exhausted beyond measure, I leaned against Thorn, who supported me with an arm around my waist. Together, we waded to the edge of the pool and climbed out on shaking legs. Queen Dagger wrapped us both in thick furs, her hands trembling with emotion. "Come," she urged. "You must see." She led us through the corridors of Black Frost Keep, up winding stairs, until we emerged onto the highest balcony. What we saw there stole whatever breath remained in our lungs. All around us, as far as the eye could see, the snow was melting. Not gradually, as in a natural spring thaw, but rapidly, visibly, revealing green shoots beneath that had lain dormant for decades. The perpetual gray clouds that had hung over the northern lands were breaking apart, allowing shafts of golden sunlight to pierce through. Birds long absent from the skies had returned, their songs filling the air. And perhaps most remarkable of all, the armies that had surrounded the keep had stopped their advance. Warriors stood frozen in place, weapons lowered, as they witnessed the miraculous transformation occurring around them. "It's beautiful," I whispered, leaning against Thorn's solid warmth. "It's the beginning," he replied softly. "Just the beginning." As we stood watching the rebirth of the northern lands, Thorn's arm tightened around my waist. I turned to find him looking not at the miraculous transformation below, but at me. "The ritual is complete," he said. "The curse is broken. As I promised from the start, your choices are your own now. You're free to stay or go as you wish." I thought of the vision we had shared in the depths of the sacred pool, the possible future with the three of us in a summer meadow, not destined, not prophesied, but possible, a choice. "And if I choose to stay?" I asked, my heart pounding with something that had nothing to do with magical rituals or broken curses. "Then I would ask you to stay not as the savior of the North or the last Blackthorn seer," Thorn said, his voice low and earnest, "but as my equal, my partner, my—" He hesitated, then finished simply, "My mate, if that's what you want." I looked out over the awakening land, feeling the rightness of it deep in my bones. Then I turned back to the man beside me, the Alpha King who had recognized me when everyone else had seen nothing, who had given me the freedom to choose even when prophecy and curse had seemed to dictate our paths. "This is where I belong," I said, with the certainty of a seer and the conviction of a woman who had finally found her home. "With this land, these people, and with you." The kiss we shared as spring returned to the north was not the end of our story, but a beginning. One chosen freely, with clear hearts and open eyes. The forgotten one remembered, the scentless now carrying the sweetest perfume, and between us, the promise of summer